She entered the lecture hall quietly, wearing only a gray cardigan. The tall, stern professor forced her to try an impossible equation. The students smirked, ready to see history made. This university would witness the greatest comeuppance yet. Texas State's lecture hall buzzed with anticipation as Professor Richard Harrington approached the podium. Known as a top mathematician and leader of the department, he despised anyone he saw as less intelligent. Sarah Mitchell slipped into the back row, smoothing her plain gray cardigan over her white blouse. At 37, she looked out of place among the graduate students, but she wasn't there to blend in. She was there to learn. Today's talk would cover Riemann's hypothesis and how it could affect quantum computing. Harrington raised his hand, demanding silence with his commanding voice. His silver beard and sharp blue suit made him look even more authoritative, eyes sweeping over the room and pausing on Sarah for a moment. His mouth twitched with quiet disapproval. She recognized that look, short, judging glances, dismissive attitudes. It was the same look she got when she applied for a maintenance job 3 years ago. The symposium started with presentations from doctoral candidates. Sarah listened carefully, taking detailed notes. Her eyes brightened when they discussed complex math theories. When it was her turn to ask questions, she kept her hand down. She had learned that people like her weren't expected to speak in places like this. During the break, she overheard two students whispering. One asked, "Who's the cleaning lady taking notes?" They both snickered. One said, "Probably just auditing for extra credits." The other dismissed her. Harrington hates when outsiders show up to these talks. Sarah tightened her grip on her notebook but kept her calm. They had no idea math had been her passion since childhood. She had learned advanced calculus on her own, working night shifts and raising her daughter alone. They couldn't see the equations dancing in her mind when she closed her eyes. As the session resumed, Harrington presented his bold new idea about an unsolved math problem. His explanation was smooth but had a small flaw. Sarah recognized it immediately. She had spent many nights studying this exact equation. "Any questions?" Harrington asked, sounding as if he expected none. No one moved until Sarah hesitated, raising her hand almost without thinking. She instantly wished she hadn't. All eyes turned to her. Harrington raised his eyebrows, pretending to be surprised. "Yes, madam," he said slowly, with a tone full of condescension. "I was curious about the variable change in step 4. Sarah said quietly, "Wouldn't that cause problems with the boundary conditions?" The room suddenly went silent. Several students looked at each other. Harrington's face grew serious. "Your name?" he demanded. "Sarah Mitchell." "And your department?" he pressed. Sarah hesitated. "Facilities management," she answered softly. A hush spread through the room. Harrington's expression shifted from surprise to a sly smile. "Facilities management," he said slowly, letting the words hang. "Interesting. Do you really believe you found a mistake in my work?" Sarah's cheeks burned. "Not exactly a mistake, just a potential issue," she replied. Harrington cut her off. "Instead of questioning real math, focus on simpler things." Several students burst into laughter, breaking the tension. Sarah's cheeks flushed hot as she sank back into her seat. She wished she had never raised her hand. What neither she nor anyone else saw was that this embarrassing moment would spark a surprising discovery. Professor Harrington wasn't finished. He chose an easy target and seemed intent on making Sarah stand out. Smiling slightly, he brushed his tie slowly and said, "Since our guest from Facilities Management trusts math theory, perhaps she could show us what she knows." He pointed to the chalkboard. "Come to the front, Ms. Mitchell." Sarah frowned. Every part of her wanted to say no, to run away, but a stronger feeling pushed her upright, or maybe fatigue from always being judged. With slow, steady steps, she approached the podium. Each step sounded loud on the wood floor. Whispers followed her as she moved. She took the chalk from Harrington's hand, avoiding eye contact. "Let's make this simple," Harrington said loudly. The word simple sounded mean, full of sarcasm. Then, he wrote a complicated differential equation on the board. Sarah knew it right away. It was a tough problem from advanced multivariable calculus. Not easy, but not impossible for someone who had studied. The real challenge wasn't the math. It was Harrington's plan to humiliate her. "Take your time," he added, voice sugary with false kindness. "We're all eager to learn from different minds." Laughter spread around the room. Sarah's hand shook slightly. She stared at the board. Behind her, someone whispered, "This is just painful." Dr. Elizabeth Chen, visiting professor from MIT, watched silently from the front row. She frowned at Harrington but stayed quiet, watching Sarah closely. Sarah took a deep breath. The numbers and symbols on the board began to make sense. They fell into patterns she had learned long ago. She never studied Beaton Community College. Still, math had been her refuge. During long nights after her husband left, after her daughter was asleep, and between scrubbing floors, she lifted the chalk and made her first mark. Harrington opened his mouth as if to say she should start simple, but he stopped when she began working confidently. The room turned quiet as she carefully worked through the problem. Her nerves disappeared. She lost herself in the neat flow of the math. She was no longer in a lecture hall. She was in her own world, where numbers always made sense. After 2 minutes, she finished the last step. She set down the chalk and stepped back. Harrington stared at her work. His smug face changed to one of confusion. He looked for mistakes but found none. The answer was right and beautifully done. "That's correct," he admitted. "Anyone with basic calculus could do it." But Dr. Chen raised her eyebrows and exchanged looks with a colleague. Harrington, not ready to give up, erased the board quickly. "Let's try something tougher," he said, a hint of anger in his voice. He wrote a new equation. Sarah didn't recognize it immediately. This wasn't just schoolwork. It was new, advanced math, the kind published only in special journals. Harrington told the room that this issue mattered for quantum encryption, but his eyes stayed on Sarah. If she wanted to go back to her seat, he would understand. The challenge felt like a test thrown in front of her. Everyone held their breath, waiting for her to step back. Instead, she reached for the chalk again. She looked at the new equation, her confidence slipping. It was different, more complex, more abstract, filled with symbols she'd never seen in her self-study. For a second, doubt crept in. Maybe she had gone too far. Maybe Harrington was right about what she could do. The room grew silent and tense as seconds dragged on. Some students leaned forward, eyes showing pity, others trying to hide amusement. "I knew it," Harrington said, reaching for the chalk. Maybe they should just move on with the lecture. But Sarah softly said, "Wait," pulling the chalk back. Something clicked in her mind. She saw a pattern hidden in the jumble of symbols. She remembered reading an article last month during lunch. It was about a new way to think about quantum math. She started writing slowly, then faster and with more confidence. The room's mood changed as students looked at each other, confused. Even Harrington's proud look faltered as he watched her work. Dr. Chen moved forward, eyes wide, impressed not just by her solving the problem but how she was doing it. Sarah was taking an unusual path. Her intuition was clear. Midway through, she stopped, frowning at her work. She hit a wall. The equation seemed to lead nowhere. Harrington smiled. "Proud, nice try," he said, reaching for the chalk again. But Sarah held on to it. She stared at the board and fought hard. All noise disappeared in her mind. She focused on the problem. Suddenly, it was like a door unlocking. She saw the next step, an elegant move that made the whole equation simpler. She started writing confidently again. The only sound was the chalk squeaking on the board. When she used her new trick, gasps came from the front row where the teachers Saturday. "Doctor," Chen whispered to someone, who nodded fast. Harrington's face lost color. He no longer looked at her with disdain but with worry. What she was doing shouldn't have been possible, especially for someone without formal training. "That's not how it's usually done," he muttered sharply. Sarah didn't answer. She couldn't. She was lost in the math, in a flow she always had when working with numbers. She wasn't just solving Harrington's problem. She was making it better, finding shortcuts he hadn't seen. Nearing the end, tension shifted. The students who had laughed earlier had gone quiet. Their faces showed confusion, then respect. The professors whispered to each other in the front row. Harrington looked torn between wanting to stay in control and curiosity about what she was doing. She was close to the answer when Harrington suddenly walked over. He studied her work closely. His finger pointed at one particular move she used. "That transformation," he said with a tight voice, "was what caught his eye. Where did you learn it?" Sarah finally looked him straight in the eyes. "I didn't learn it. I just saw it." Their gazes locked in a moment of silence. The respected professor and the maintenance worker faced an equation that was linking their worlds in unexpected ways. Before Harrington could speak, "Doctor," Chin stood up. "That's the Lu Takahashi method," she said loud enough for everyone to hear. It was just published last month in the International Journal of Quantum Mathematics. She stared at Sarah with intensity. "How could you possibly know about it?" The question lingered in the air as everyone turned to look at Sarah. She glanced at the chalk in her hand, feeling the weight of decision ahead. For years, she had kept her talent hidden. She thought no one would believe a single mother working maintenance could understand complex math. She had kept her passion quiet, learning alone in the shadows. Now, exposed in front of everyone, she faced a choice: stay silent and safe, or stand up and be true to herself. "I didn't know it was called the Lu Takahashi method," she stated, her voice growing stronger. "I have no formal training being community college." "Impossible," Harrington scoffed, but his voice lacked confidence. "These ideas need years of specialized schooling." "Doctor," Chem moved closer to the board and studied Sarah's work. Yet, here it was, perfectly done. She looked at Sarah with curiosity. "Oh," Sarah took a deep breath. The room's attention bore down on her. At that moment, she thought of her daughter, Lily. Lily worked double shifts to save for college. She had watched her mother hide her talents for years to avoid judgment. "Math has always made sense to me," Sarah said simply. "When I see equations, I see patterns and connections. Solutions come when I look long enough." A student in the third row raised her hand. "Why don't you work in math?" she asked. "Because life is hard," Sarah replied. Her voice had steel now. "I had my daughter young. Her father left. I needed steady work with health insurance." She gestured to the unfinished work on the board. "This job doesn't pay bills or cover her care." The room fell silent as her words settled over the crowd. "Then why come to this event?" Harrington asked, now genuinely confused instead of rude. Sarah looked him straight in the eye. "Because I love math. Because learning doesn't stop when life gets tough." The chalk felt heavy in her hand. She turned back to the equation. It was incomplete, and her choice was clear. She could stop now or finish what she started. She could hide her talent or show the world who she really was. Sarah picked up the chalk. Her hands stopped trembling. "I'll finish this," she said softly. almost to herself. With that, she stepped into her strength, ready to prove that a woman from maintenance could do just as much as any expert. She faced the board again. Chuck ready. The room went completely quiet, a stillness deeper than expected. The sound of chalk on the blackboard seemed loud enough to echo. Her mind cleared. She was back in the world of math, where titles and skill levels didn't matter. Only the right answer mattered now. She finished the rest of the problem with smooth confidence, her hand moving steadily over the board. When she hit a tricky part, she paused, tilted her head just slightly, then took an unexpected turn. By making a substitution that simplified the entire equation, Dr. Chen gasped softly. She's using dimensional analysis to reduce the quantum variance. She whispered to her colleague, "I've never seen anyone solve it like that." Harrington stood stiff, his face calm as Sarah's solution unfolded. It was more than correct, it was clever and graceful, showing a kind of math that went deeper than simple calculations. When she placed the final answer in a tidy box and stepped back, no one spoke. The solution shone on the board like a moment of clarity. She hadn't just answered Harrington's challenge. She had made it better, discovering shortcuts no one else had shared in any journal. Dr. Chen was the first to break the silence. "That's incredible," she said as she moved closer. "You combined 3 steps into one with this change." She looked around the room. "This isn't just right, it's brilliant." A soft buzz spread through the crowd. Students who had been sneering earlier now looked at Sarah with real awe. Several professors quietly took out their phones, snapping pictures of her work. Harrington cleared his throat. While her way was unusual, he admitted slowly, "It might have some merit." His voice sounded a little reluctant, like it was hard to admit. "Merit?" Dr. Chen pressed, her eyebrows raised. "Richard, this could help us better understand quantum encryption math. It's work worth sharing." Sarah stayed quiet, feeling an odd detach from all that was happening. Chalk dust coated her fingers. She hadn't set out to prove anyone wrong. She simply did her best to answer the problem. Then Dr. Chen turned to her. "Ms. Mitchell, do you keep any notebooks? Have you written down other ideas?" Sarah hesitated. "I have notebooks, just things I work on at night when I can't sleep." "Haven't seen those," Harrington said, curiosity outweighing pride. "What kind of math do you do?" "Mostly number theory," Sarah answered, feeling a little shy again. "I work on prime factorization algorithms." Dr. Chen and Harrington exchanged surprised looks. Prime factorization is key to how cryptography works, a very deep part of math. "I'd like to see those notebooks," Dr. Chen said firmly. A student from the front row stood up suddenly. "That was the most amazing thing I've ever seen," he declared and started clapping. Others joined in, and soon the whole room was filled with applause. Sarah felt her cheeks warm, but not with shame. This wasn't what she expected. As the applause grew, she met the eyes of a young woman in the back. The student had watched her closely all along. She nodded at Sarah with real respect. It was as if she had seen something life-changing. In that moment, Sarah understood her work wasn't just about math. She had become visible. Her knowledge and her mind had finally broken free from the shadows. She was seen in a new way. When the applause stopped, something inside her felt different. The room had changed forever. The moment was not just for Sarah but for everyone who had seen her change from invisible to extraordinary. The symposium had ended an hour ago, but the lecture hall was still full. Sarah was surrounded by professors and students, all eager to ask her about her math ideas. Dr. Chen stayed close to her, almost protecting her. A quantum computing professor told her, "Your sense of multidimensional analysis is amazing. Have you thought about studying it more formally?" Sarah gave a small, sad smile. Think about it. Yes, offered it. No. Across the room, Professor Harrington talked passionately with the department dean. His hands moved a lot, and sometimes he pointed at Sarah. His earlier arrogance had changed. Now, there was respect mixed with a hint of defensiveness. Dr. Chen gently touched Sarah's arm. We should talk about your future, she whispered. MIT has fellowships for students like you. Sarah looked surprised. MIT, she asked. Talent like yours doesn't come often. Dr. Chen said, it would be wrong to let it go to waste. The crowd moved aside as Harrington approached. His silver beard seemed to quiver a little with emotion. Mitchell, he said in a firm tone, the department would like to see your notebooks. If you're willing, there might be chances to discuss. His words sounded careful, almost like an apology. It was the closest thing to one he could give. Sarah nodded. I'll bring them tomorrow. I will review them myself, she said. Dr. Chen shot Harrington a sharp look that made his mouth tighten. As people started to leave, Sarah grabbed her things. Her phone lit up with 5 missed calls from the babysitter. Real life reminded her of the practical side that always held her back from math. As she headed for the door, a young female student stopped her. Miss Mitchell, the student said nervously, I'm studying engineering. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for what? Sarah asked. For showing that where you start doesn't decide what you know, the student said. Her eyes sparkled with emotion. Sarah felt warmth spread in her chest. She hadn't thought about how much her moment could inspire others. Outside, the evening air felt different, full of new possibilities. Sarah drew a deep breath, thinking about the notebooks at home. They held years of her quiet work. Tomorrow, top minds in math would examine her ideas. She found it scary. It also made her feel alive. For the first time in years, Sarah imagined a different future, one where her mind, not her uniform, counted most. 6 months later, Sarah stood in front of a smaller classroom. Eager students looked at her while she explained a tough theorem. Her gray cardigan sleeves were pushed up as she moved across the whiteboard. No more hesitation or guilt about taking space. Her life had changed fast. After the symposium, Dr. Chen found her a quick fellowship. She knew Sarah's talent couldn't wait. 2 of Sarah's ideas had already been published, with her as the main author. Professor Harrington had changed his mind, but it took several meetings where he was outvoted. Finally, he admitted her ideas had value, especially after her work on quantum encryption drew attention from many research groups. The greatest change was inside her. Sarah no longer kept her intelligence or passion hidden. She spoke with confidence about her work, knowing her worth came from her own mind, not her degrees. Her daughter Lily had earned a full scholarship and transferred to the same university. Inspired by her mother's courage, she began to chase her own goals with pride. As Sarah finished explaining a concept, a student raised her hand. The young woman, unsure but determined, asked her question. Sarah saw herself in her and called on her without hesitation. She told her students, never be scared to raise your hand. That question you hide may change everything, not just for you, but for everyone watching. If Sarah's story from invisible to influential touched your heart, remember that talent can hide in the most unexpected places. Often, it's not a lack of skill but circumstance that hides potential. Who in your life might you be underestimating? We welcome your stories about discovering hidden talents. Where are you listening from today? Share your thoughts below. If you liked this story about change and growth, subscribe for more moments that can transform lives. Sometimes, the smartest people aren't in lecture halls. They're doing the work behind the scenes. Like, dare, and join us in celebrating unsung heroes everywhere.